Good morning, everybody, and happy Leading Change Live Day. I've decided I'm going to make it like its own little holiday now moving forward. I'm super excited for the conversation that we've got today. And as is always the tradition, while we're going around the room and doing introductions here with my lovely guests, I want everybody that is here on the virtual side to join us in the chat. Tell us where you're joining from. Start thinking through questions that you might have for my esteemed panel here. And fair disclosure to everybody watching today, I've already warned everybody on the call that I have a little bit of a cough today, so they're not allowed to make me laugh. They've been instructed that they have to be dry and boring, or I will keep myself muted with a 95% chance that at some point I will forget to unmute myself when I come back on afterward with a coughing attack. But this is the benefit of a virtual event. The show can go on with the live stream and nobody has to worry about getting sick from me. While we are waiting for some of those comments to start rolling in with people joining us from all around the world, I'm going to go around the world, kind of, or at least the country here, and do some introductions. So Sri, can you get us started by saying hello to everybody and telling them a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. This is Sri Ramaswamy. I'm the founder and CEO of Charlie.ai, bring more than 20 plus years of experience in the world of data analytics and advanced analytics in the fields of banking, and then the last 15 years in the insurance industry. And here I am trying not to make Emma laugh today.
Thank you. And there we go. And also, Sri is the founder of Charlie AI, just as she said, and Charlie is one of our wonderful sponsors for today. So I want to encourage everybody to make sure that you make your way over and check them out beyond the conversation that we're going to be having and the insights that Sri is going to be providing for all of us. Scott, I'm going to come to you if you would like to do an introduction as well.
Sure, thank you. And I actually thought I was originally invited to be dry and boring, so that's I will fulfill that goal. But no, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here with Rachel, Sri, and yourself. I think you're really putting some forward-thinking issues out in front of people, and that's great. So I'm the CEO of Pinpoint Predictive. I have been in the insurance industry for quite a long period of time, and actually I took a different route than I think many have, which is the legal route. I was a lawyer. We worked a bit of insurance defense, and I represented insurance companies and started to really understand what the insurance was all about, and really, I don't know, fell in love with what we do as an industry for people, for their dreams, and being there for when they have a need. And so, transitioning from a lawyer to leading an insurance organization to now in the insurtech world, I think all of us here are just building looking to build an insurance legacy that keeps this wonderful industry around for generations and generations to come.
Scott, I'm the most worried about you actually making me laugh. So I know you said that you got but it's the dry delivery that gets me, and then I start laughing, and then the cough starts happening. So
that's right.
It might be sneaky, but you're the one that I'm watching. Rachel, can you give everybody an introduction as well?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and be boring as well. And I'm glad to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Villan. I'm the founder, executive chairman, and CTO of Hosta. I actually started my career as an architect before getting into insurance. As an architect, my teams and I were just manually measuring spaces by hand, and we would have to document spaces, and it was a very tedious process. I knew there had to be a change here, so I ended up becoming an engineer, ended up going to MIT, got my master's and PhD there, and amongst a whole bunch of consulting with other corporate companies, eventually came up with a solution with Hosta, with my co-founder, essentially, where now we, what Hosta does is that we've introduced the first image to estimate solution for water damage claims, where AI is able to extract critical data such as measurements, floor plans, materials and objects, and line items directly from your images, all without needing an app or special software. Right. So that's what we do, and I'm excited to be here and really just answer great questions here.
Great. And I also forgot to mention that Pinpoint is one of our sponsors today as well. So I would like to point all of you guys and Hasta, of course, to go check out the wonderful companies. And there's a reason that I handpicked these folks for this conversation, because through interactions with all three of you guys, I've recognized that there is a focus from you and your organizations on some of the things outside of just strictly technology that make this wonderful world of AI actually start to come to fruition for us. So, as promised and advertised, we're going to be talking about questions that you should be asking as you're making buying decisions and partner decisions of looking at who to bring into your organization and what solutions to start leveraging as we all start to dip our toes further and further into the AI pool. But Sri, I always like to start all of my interviews and questions and everything with something that's a level setting discussion for everybody to make sure we're all on the same page, using the same definitions. And this is like, goes back to my little digital literacy heart. I like to make sure we're all speaking the same language before we start digging in. So can you get us started by talking through a high level definition of what we're talking about when we say AI, and maybe where our focus should be when we start looking at AI solutions?
Okay, I think this is intentional, but you've got a PhD here, but I'm trying to get a score 100% today. And Rachel, feel free to grade me today. So AI is a very, very broad term that people use, and it's just used to describe various techniques that can be used to teach machines to do the human tasks. Now, it can be generative AI or it can be extractive AI. These are different methods of AI. But AI itself comes up with different techniques, and they go into things like vision, text, images, behaviors, sentiments. You can have different techniques for each of these types of data. At Charlie, what we have focused on is the natural language processing, which is more into looking into unstructured data and deriving insights from there. And that's how I would describe AI, is to start first looking at what is the source of data that you wish to analyze and bring insights from.
The coughing and the muting and the coming back on. I told you I had a 95% chance of messing that up, and I've already done it within the first 10 minutes. All right. Well, thank you, Sri. Now I got to get myself back together here. So Scott, now I want to talk to you about or you look like you were about to say something. Did you want to add something there, Scott?
If it's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I certainly am not adding anything to the definition. I'm usually the person that somebody will look to and say, "Can you dumb that down for us, Scott?" Because I have that level. But no, I think somewhat to a question you asked towards the end of that, which was, what we should be looking for or asking when we're going after AI. It really builds on what Sri was saying, which is, first of all, looking for outcomes. What outcomes are you going for? But then, proposed regulations and guidelines and existing regulations and guidelines are really giving you a roadmap of what you should be asking, not only yourselves, but AI vendors. And I'm sure we'll probably get to talk about that a little, but those are questions and areas that carriers should be asking themselves and their vendors when they're looking at them and as they continue to partner with them. So I won't go into more detail, but I just thought some good guidance is out there from the regulators in terms of what carriers should be looking for.
And don't you worry, we're going to get to that a little bit more. But I do actually want to pause and come maybe at a secondary question here to you, Scott, with the thought process of when do we build? And when do we partner? And when is it appropriate to bring somebody in and start evaluating solutions as opposed to trying to build something from scratch? And before I hand it off to you to talk through this response, I want everybody watching's ears to perk up to this one, because specifically within the insurance industry, we have such a propensity to build. And I think that there is a time and a place to build, but there's a time and a place to partner. And I think that we need to get more savvy on this build versus buy spectrum for us to really kind of take the next step. And part of the reason that transitions take a longer time in insurance is because we're trying to reinvent the wheel every time. So Scott, could you talk through kind of like maybe when it is time to build versus that buying mentality?
Boy, what you said is something we could also spend some time on, because you're right. We're not the only industry, but when faced with issues or new things, new technology and other tools, we've always had the knee jerk of, we can do that, because insurance has really, really smart people in it. So that's the natural inclination, is to say we can do that. But I think as you look at the build, buy, or rent, this is something that's been out there for a long time. And I know we're focused on AI here, and there are certain processes I wish we would all revisit. But there's a decision-making process that applies, whether it's an AI platform or product or any other tool. And that's what I said, is start, first of all, with the outcome. What are you looking to achieve? What are you looking to avoid? And senior management should really be involved in that. They should be the ones driving any look at vendors and any decisions on whether to build it or buy it or rent it. And when I say outcomes, it could be you're trying to get a competitive advantage, or it will give you a competitive advantage in your mind. You're trying to turn the corner on an issue that you just haven't been able to turn the corner on. And there's also something's on fire and we need to address it. So those are the types of first decisions that have to be made by senior management in terms of what are we going to focus our efforts on. And then when you're looking at the decisions on the buy, build, or rent, and I know I say rent, license, it's after that you look at your typical security, and insurance companies have very robust InfoSec processes. Legal and compliance issues. And when you're looking at those, it's more, is this something that we should have in-house and control? Or is this something that from a compliance and legal perspective, we can control enough with the vendor, and we're comfortable that the vendor is focused on these areas that we could do it. And then one of the biggest things to do is evaluate the skills and bandwidth of your own organization. And in doing that, always have an eye towards what your core competencies are as a company. You should be building on your core competencies. If you're looking at things that are outside those core competencies or skill sets of your employees, or you're simply too busy, then you've got to start looking at, okay, should we go buy something or partner? Because partnering is a very quick and easy, I should have used air quotes on that, process. And then I guess the last thing I would say is the timing. How fast can you deploy if you buy it or if you partner? How fast can you deploy if you decide to build it in-house? How much is it going to cost? And what's the opportunity cost you're losing by pulling people off of what they were working on, and now they're working on something totally new? Those are all the elements that should be looked at and clearly entertained. I know we'll come in with a bias that we can do it, but there are new technologies, new platforms. You've got 3 of them right here that are bringing just new intelligence to the market that's clearly not a core competence right now. And that's how it should be looked at. So I hope that answers the question.
It sure does. And I think I have my opinions on this build versus buy. And again, there's statements that have been made by like the CEO of Microsoft that like every company should be a software company. I personally, I don't agree with that. I don't think, to your point, Scott, that that's the core competency of many insurance carriers. And that's not to say that they don't have a core competency or something that differentiates them, but technology typically isn't the part that's differentiating them. They're just spending a lot of time and resource and effort to, again, build it from scratch, as opposed to looking at where they can leverage that.
And Emma, sorry.
I got a +1, so that's good news.
Go
ahead, Scott.
No, just one add-on to that. You also have to realize that, you're not done when you build it. Mm-hmm. And that's what the partners bring to you. They're updating it on a constant basis. So it's not over when you build it. So you're making a decision to spend a lot of money, a lot of human capital for as long
For the
as
life
you're
of the
operating that.
solution.
So
And don't even get me started on what that means for some of the legacy tech that's in there and some of the conversations that I've had with carriers trying to get high school and college students interested in coding and COBOL. But I'll start, I'm going to get off of my soapbox.
Can I
And
just add one more thing there, Emma? I think the last point is very critical. It's like you have to understand the core competencies, but also software companies scale. They take their software and they're able to scale, and that's how they make money. But if you're looking at this, doing the similar thing in an insurance company, you'll have to start wondering what your product really is. And your product really is not the software, it's the risk management part of it. It's offering products that mitigate risks.
yeah. So, Rachel, I want to come to you now to talk through, okay, we've convinced everybody. They now know it's time to partner as opposed to maybe building everything internally. And we're moving into that partnership discussion. A lot of times, questions will arise or should arise, going back to the idea of this event, around who owns the data, who owns the model, how, like, what does that whole process look like in terms of kind of like moving through that partnership? And I know that that answer might look different for different people, but can you talk through how to ask some of those questions and maybe some tips or tricks for people as they're working through those discussions?
Yeah, definitely. Now we're going to the meat of it to get to the AI solution. So essentially, as a customer, any data that you provide, right? Well, first off, the ownership of the data has to be clearly defined in the contractual agreement, right? And then any data as a customer that you provide that includes images, documents, specific claims information, usually remains your property, right? So this means that you retain control over how this data is used and shared. Let's start off with that, and then there's the like generated data or the derivatives that are created, right? So in this course of using any type of like AI service or vendor, right? New data is generated just based on the analysis that's created from the AI. There's results, there's estimates, there's derived insights. The ownership there can be varied. Sometimes it's considered a joint asset, or it might be owned by either, say the customer or the AI vendor itself, depending on the agreement specifics. The models and algorithms, those are generally proprietary assets of the AI vendor, right? So you might want to ask that, typically that, well, you'll have access to these capabilities and tools. The intellectual property of the AI technology itself remains with the vendor themselves. And then, of course, there's data sharing and confidentiality. So any sharing of that data, whether it's to improve the AI models or for other purpose, it's usually done under explicit consent. So yeah, no, I mean, it's like these four things, like your customer data, your derivatives of the data, the AI models and algorithms, and then data sharing and confidentiality are the top four that you want to be mindful of.
Now I'm seeing in the comments, you guys, we had somebody from North Carolina and then a +1 for North Carolina, not what I was saying. And now another +1 for North Carolina. And it's all coming together. Apparently my sickness made me think that I was getting kudos in the comments as opposed to people following the assignment to tell us where they were joining from. But I am excited to see some comments coming in and some feedback again, kind of around where the black box mentality and stuff. So I love to see the conversation continuing there. That comment was so big that I can't keep it on screen, or we can't see everybody as we continue our conversation, but make sure you check that out. And again, kind of continue the discussion that we're having here in the comments, and let us know if you've got other questions for this group. I've got plenty, so don't worry. We've got time to fill here, but if you've got things, we'd love to bring them into the conversation as well. So now I want to kind of switch gears, and the next couple of questions that I've got are a little bit more focused on the people side of bringing AI in. And then we're going to move from people into regulatory components and some of the stuff that you were touching on earlier, Scott. But one of the big things that I think surrounds AI is a bit of fear associated with it, what it means for our jobs, what it means for the people that are in your organizations. So can you kind of talk through your vision and your view of how we keep humans in the loop as we start to leverage AI tools more effectively?
Sure. And never wanting to leave a question alone. Rachel knocked it out of the park on that. Working on that agreement so that you don't have arguments over that issue. Spend the time on those agreements. So, usually we think of the human element of the human in the middle, more from an ethical AI standpoint. For me, it's two things come to top of mind when I think of the human element. That is, first of all, AI should be amplifying human strengths. That's why you should be bringing AI in. And some of the main reasons, not all, but some of the main reasons that or ways this is evidenced is through automation, because this allows humans to, I'm going to say employees, employees to work on things that are squarely in their skill set or work on more strategic items. Augmentation, which helps build skill sets in your employees. Discovery, so discovery of new intelligence, like we're talking about here, and then aid in risk mitigation and compliance. These are areas that are not replacing humans; they're amplifying human strengths. And I know I stole this from somebody, and I've said it to you, Emma. The concerns that an employee will be replaced by AI, I look at them and say, you will not be replaced by AI. You'll be replaced by a human who's open to and using AI, because it offers all these huge advancements and advantages on the human strengths. In terms of what we typically think of when we say human in the middle, it's really a human in the loop for our checks and balances on AI. Are there processes in place where there's a human reviewing the AI output, AI actions, validating, and do they have the authority to either override or rerun whatever's being done through AI? It's that key check and balance that regulators are going to require, and frankly, I just think it's smart to have that human in the middle that's checking this and validating. So those are the two areas when I talk about humans when it comes to AI.
So one, I don't think it's a bad thing for you to call employees humans, because
it just seems weird.
No, it does feel a little weird to just keep saying human over and over again. But I also think that that's an important thing for us to be thoughtful of on a regular basis. Is sometimes in organizations, when we start leveraging technology, we start to forget about that human part, and the employees almost become an input that's a part of our technology equation, as opposed to truly thinking about the fact that no, we have humans that have personalities and external lives and all of these things that play into their perceptions of what we're doing and how we're bringing in technology. And I promise there's a point to this little ramble to say we have to manage the change that's associated with it. And we have to focus on that human element side. And anybody and everybody who follows me knows this is my absolute favorite topic to talk about. And as part of the catalyst for this entire conversation, Sri is a part of our Catalyst community, and I asked everybody in there for information about topics and ideas that they'd like to see. And Sri brought up this idea of looking at change management associated with AI. Then Scott, I was sitting down with you, talking with you during our last interview, and we started riffing on this idea of different questions, and then thus this episode was born. So this is the question I'm most excited for, because it was kind of the catalyst for everything. So Sri, can you talk through, from your perspective, what successful change management, beyond bringing them into the loop, those humans into the loop, and having them be a part of the process and understanding the role they're going to play, how do we move through the change management, dispel some of the fear, and get people on board with really adopting AI?
Absolutely. So I'm just kind of going to repeat some of the things that Rachel and Scott said here. But before we think about change management, the most important things and questions to follow along these lines are some of these things that you need to consider when you are looking at an AI solution. First is the goal. Second is the security aspect. Third is the source of where, what is your source data that you want to look at, that you want to enhance, that you want to build upon. Bias, model type, training, output. What is the output you're looking for? Why do you want that AI solution? What is the real output that you're looking for? And how is that output going to be used. And the most important thing I stress upon is the ethical use. More than ethically building machine learning, it's the ethical use of AI that is the key. Now, all these things are important because they drive the change management, and change management is really critical, because if you are bringing in any added intelligence or any automation or anything that is going to drive your business process efficiencies, if your business process does not change, then there is something that you are not really truly effectively using AI. So please think about the change management aspect, which is, if I'm giving you an insight saying, hey, there's this claimant, I give you added intelligence on this claimant's injuries and further things that happened and prior injuries, and the person is old or the person is quite young, or whatever may be the additional attributes, or maybe something's coming from the house itself, the damages, the property side of things, or the BI side of things. No matter what intelligence I give you, you have to be able to work that into your workflow. And usually the workflows involve humans. So it's very important to kind of get the human to start thinking about what should be my process if I come to know from AI that this particular claim that has just come in has all the aspects of a large loss, or has all the different indicators that there might be an attorney getting involved, or that it might become more severe, or could have elements of some suspicious fraud. So I'll stop there and just give everybody a chance to kind of understand, why is it important to think about the business process, and where does change management really start? It starts with the workflow and changes in the workflow involving humans.
And I want to kind of like double tap on a couple of those things, like the idea, and I talk about this constantly, going back to what Scott said, I didn't make it up. It's been around for a lot longer than I have, but this idea that transformation really needs to be about people, then process, then technology. And the reason that it flows in that direction in my mind is just what you said, Sri. We have to look at our employees, the challenges that they have, and actually look at what problem we're trying to solve. Then we look at the process, how those people interact with that process, and figure out what our desired outcome is. And then, and only then, is it time for us to go shop and pick a solution and figure out how to solve that problem. And I actually saw a post, and I'll tag him in the comments here in a minute. But Ed Halsey, who is, I think, just shift jobs, so he's with Genesis now, out of the UK, made a post this morning about one of the biggest things that he sees being a challenge with AI is that there's a lot of questions around, like, so how are you leveraging AI? And if we take that approach, we have a solution that we're searching for a problem for, which we all know to be effective and have successful transformation, that needs to flip. We need to fall in love with a problem and then find the solution for that problem. And if we lead with technology as opposed to leading with the people and the process, we don't find the right solution fit to bring the outcomes that we're looking for forward. So again, I said I was going to not be on a soapbox, and then here I go. But I just really wanted to drive home that point from your perspective, Sri, of how important the people and how they interact with that process is on the front end of making any technology decision. And like, I will tell you, this is the same, whether it's like switching from Microsoft Word to Google like Suite, and looking at how you need to have a reason that you're doing that if you want people to adopt it and be happy with it. So even like the smallest technology change that we feel like shouldn't be a huge move will fall apart and blow up in your face if you don't take that approach to it. Someone was going to say, Scott.
Hey, Emma. Yeah, I love this discussion, and I don't want to rehash what we've said, but one thing that I want to make sure, at least I make a point on, is it also takes good leadership, right? The reason some of these issues arise is a poor communication about the why, or it's not coming from the top, or not having a senior level person remain in the process and not just have it as an edict from above, and then have other people. There has to be that involvement and leadership, because It's how it's communicated and the why that you guys have been talking about, which will allay some of the fears and apprehensions that employees have, because they'll understand exactly why, what you're trying to solve, and looking for the tools to solve it. And I'm with you guys on the technologies at the end. Again, we're all talking AI, but you first have to understand the business problem and what you're going after, and then look for tools to attack that business problem. But leadership is so important, and I that's my soapbox is making sure that leaders follow through and keep working with everybody through the evaluation, because it just helps the whole thing.
Well, Scott, we can have a whole nother conversation on that, because the idea of vision and leadership and how that flows through is obviously a really important part to me too. I do see a couple of questions coming in, and we will get to those in 1 second. But Rachel, I want to come back to an idea that got mentioned, I think maybe by Scott earlier, in the idea when we were talking build versus buy, that like when you decide to build, and I think Audrey in the comments mentioned the idea that like building is almost like having like a pet or a child. Like you have to take care of it. You don't just like bring a puppy home and like, good luck, puppy, have fun living. And so, or child, like we really can't do that, but at least they'll talk back at you. So when we take a look at like what that care and feeding looks like, what are the questions that buyers should be asking to understand how a solution provider is going to support the enhancement or the scaling of a solution like Sri brought up? What does that process look like, and what questions should people be asking to make sure that they understand that?
Sure. So again, it's going to fall into humans are still part of this process, right? So you have your AI model, your human model, and then the other piece is your ground truth data, which is the data to the customer that provide for training, right? You're going to train the AI on existing data so that it can learn, right, if you're providing that. And so there are a couple of things here that are needed for caring and feeding an AI and requires your participation in there. One is, knowing what the technical requirements are, right? Are you providing the infrastructure for that, or is your vendor providing that, right? And how are you going to be transferring information? And then there's the data requirements, right? If your data is considered yours, are you willing to transfer it over to your vendor, right, so that they can work with it, or will they be working in your environment? In that, now you've got to annotate that data. Are you going to annotate that data, or is your vendor going to annotate that data, right, so that you can train the AI and feed it? There are also infrastructure requirements, more so on like, what kind of computational power you'll be using, development environment, deployment infrastructure, right? That all goes part of it. And then the operational requirements. So you've got all this, you've got all the scaffolding put together, and now you've got your AI, and it's working in the wild, and then it sees something that it hasn't seen before. And you got to make sure that the AI behaves well, right? It's kind of like teaching a child to learn a language, and then you have to create this constant feedback loop, right? And so when an AI sees something that hasn't seen before, you need to train it on new data. So then there's essentially monitoring of that AI model once it's deployed, because that AI model is going to degrade over time because your data changes over time, right? It sees different things over time. And so that's part of the maintenance part of it. So, there's three things that are involved as part of this. It's, the AI, this partnership, I would call the AI model, the human model, and the ground truth that all work together. It's a constant iteration in order to make sure that the AI models themselves can perform well in the field.
I love the analogy of like teaching a child about language. Just as a side note, my 4-year-old recently learned the phrase "speaking of which," and you can only imagine all of the really fun spots that she put that in. And she needed that feedback loop of like, yeah, I don't know if like we weren't really speaking to that, Al. Like maybe we try a different approach if we're going to use that phrase. She also really likes like just all of these little catchphrases like, well, of course. And, these little things that we've got to give her like that coaching. So that image is very relevant to me. And I think helps break down what that process that somebody else in the comments called a black box before helps add some clarity around what that maybe that box is doing for people that aren't as familiar with the technology. Before we get to the last question, because I know that this group could talk for the last 10 minutes all about like bias and regulatory components, and we saved that for last because that'll be a rip-roaring conversation here. But before we get to that, I do want to touch on a couple of things that came through. So there was a comment, and I apologize to whoever this was, it's not pulling your name through, but thinking about the human in the loop, and if we want AI to supplement or enhance human capabilities, and which which one is better served. And I'd love to hear your guys' thought process. I have my views on where AI lives, and I would say it's probably somewhere in between supplementing and enhancing. But I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. They said that disclosure, they're a marketer. So like the more that your effective words can have, the better. So I would love to hear whoever speaks first.
I've got some thoughts on that real quickly. I would say I'm with you. It's in between supplement or enhancement. The thing with AI needs like hundreds or millions of data in order to train itself, in order to learn. The great thing about the power of the human brain has the ability to essentially make decisions without a lot of data, right? And so with that, it's essentially AI and with humans combined together create this great relationship in order to get the outcomes that are desired by whoever's using the solution.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go next. I'll say AI in the loop. And the reason is because today it's at a very nascent stage as opposed to how people think about it. It's literally at automation of information gathering and information enhancement. That's really where we are today. So I would put AI in the loop of what you're doing. That's what I would go with.
Yeah, I had not thought about that. I'm not a marketing person, lawyer, remember? I had not thought about that, but it actually makes sense and is in line with what we've been saying, which is looking for business and people problems and solving them and bringing tools in, and bringing AI into the loop is exactly what we're talking about when you go there. So I had not thought about it, but it makes sense.
Yeah. And I would say from my perspective, there's a time and a place where we're getting to the point where I'd say intelligent solutions can help us fully offload manual tasks. And in those scenarios, that's where I see the human being in the loop to trust but verify. But when we start looking at the use cases where we're doing true knowledge work, kind of going back to what you were saying, Rachel, where we're trying to truly replicate the way that the human brain works, to kind of echo what the rest of you guys said, in that scenario, that feels like AI is coming into the loop and the human is still at the center of it. And so there's kind of this delineation where we've had the ability to take care of manual tasks or automate manual tasks, but now we're taking that to the next level where we are truly minimizing the role that the human plays in that part. But realistically, those are the jobs that no one's wanted to do for some time. And we've already reshaped our society around those pieces being automated in a certain capacity. And now we're looking at that new forefront. I would add for the marketer in the room, especially with like individual use of AI, kind of taking a step away from adopting tools at a corporate level. The AI is in the loop many times with people that are pushing the envelope of figuring out how to work with these tools and how to augment their own workflows too. So like use of ChatGPT and that kind of thing. Please, for the love of God, never just let ChatGPT's output be what you put out into the world. Take it, use it, brainstorm with it, use it to bounce ideas off of or find information, but it should be a data point that you're using as a part of how you structure information to put it out into the world.
Yeah. And Emma, the only thing I'm not going back on what I said. I think all that makes sense. When it comes to the things we've touched on a little bit, which is your ethical AI and bias checks, I think that's where the human in the loop or human in the middle makes sense, because the human's looking at the outputs that have been presented and testing them. So I don't know. It's interesting. And there's certain aspects there where making sure there is that human check.
Scott, let me add a very interesting thing, and I'll stop here, I promise.
You don't have to. This is the whole point. People want this. This is what they come for.
Like I said, we're going to open up our own Pandora's box here, and not to kind of do that for myself. I still have to run charlie.ai. But I think the key is, like we provide a lot of claim insights and claim intelligence. One thing, we give them predictions. Now, when you look at, what the human, can do better, and what AI, at this point cannot do, and this is being very honest, is AI cannot really look at liability. Within the claims, you cannot decide who is liable in this claim. And it really requires a human to look at all the facts and the intelligence presented by AI, but make a decision on how you want to take that claim forward, how you want to settle it, and how you want to mitigate the risk within that. And that component, I think, is still with the humans, will still be with the humans, because of, what Rachel said. Humans have that ability to look at new patterns. They may not be able to do in large volumes like AI does, but it definitely understands new patterns. And we are at very nascent stage of AI, where even automation of such decisions is, first of all, being in a regulated industry, automation of such decisions falls upon the human. So that's why I say AI in the loop.
So we've got another question, and I want to go, instead of going down, maybe I'll have you guys all back for more of a data governance slash bias conversation, because I think we honestly could have 45 minutes on that. But I'd love to go around the room and have each one of you kind of provide, and it's going to have to be, we've got 5 minutes left, so it'll have to be like 90 seconds each, to talk through a real life example of how your customers are using your tools today. So Sri, if you would, like, you kind of just like touched on the surface of what Charlie does in a little bit more detail, but could you provide like a quick case study for us to get us started?
Oh boy. Okay, very quickly, Charlie has been pre-trained on more than 55 million claims. And the reason why we did that, we took that time, is, kind of going back to what Rachel said. We wanted to kind of pre-train the insights. And before we took it to a customer, have these pre-trained insights feed the machine learning model so it can understand some of those risk insights. So how customers effectively have used this, and where we have seen the most success, is in insights and predictions, starting with low severity claims that don't have an attorney involved yet, and they have very high risk indicators of potentially blowing up, and potentially not being so severe that you can pass them through faster after somebody has taken a look at it. So really kind of augmenting the workflows is where we have seen Charlie's effectiveness come out, and Charlie really playing that partnership with your claims operations and claims managers. It starts with a management tool, and then it kind of trickles down to the adjusters. And the most important success factor that we have seen is Charlie's ability to provide a context with that prediction, and also provide a summarization coming from the natural language processing, taking that summarization and providing that to the adjuster, who's making the final call of, okay, should I go back asking further questions? What kind of questions should I be asking? How should I be taking this forward? But providing that adjuster all the intelligence, the summarization, and additional insights, and most importantly, the context behind the predictions. That's really where we have seen success with Charlie.
Great, thank you. I'm going to come to you, Rachel, and we're going to let all the ladies go first, and then we'll end with you, Scott, if you could do the same as well, Rachel.
Yeah, sure. So where we've seen our applications used, so carriers distribute to adjusters and policyholders, right, whenever there is a water damage claim that's at low severity. And with that, we, as I mentioned, we're the first solution to be able to do image to line item estimates, right? We integrate with the Symbility and Xactimate. And then from there, we are streamlining just the adjuster workflow, right? And making policyholders much happier now that they can get their claims settled much faster. One example is that we had an adjuster who was in the middle of Nebraska. He used to travel like 90 minutes or so to go visit, a policyholder's home. But now, he desk adjusts, being able to just, view claims that way and help settle them in that manner.
Cough attack again. All right, Scott, your turn now here to round us out for the conversation.
You've done very well. Yeah, so we actually are attacking the profitability quagmire I've referenced before. We have the most advanced risk selection platform that I know of, and we're bringing new intelligence to risk selection. So we've collected trillions of behavioral predictors, and we've built behavioral footprints on almost every US adult. And we correlate those behavioral footprints to core insurance outcomes and provide loss predictions. No coding required, no models required to be built. These predictions can be used on their own or in a combined model. But these predictions can be ingested real-time API, or we can even do batch. But when you're looking at loss predictions, it's claims frequency, claims severity, and loss cost. We can also predict attorney representation, SIU referral, early cancellation, and premium leakage. Importantly, all at the very top of the funnel. And a great use case is those carriers that provide leads to their agents can actually score these leads before giving them to their agents, which allows for quicker binding on the agent side and better business and more profitable business to the carrier.
Well, thank you guys so much. We're 27 seconds over, but I think we might have started like 30 seconds late. So I feel like we've got a little bit of wiggle room.
I tried.
Thank you so much for joining me. And I want to make a special thank you to Pinpoint and Charlie for sponsoring the event, making this possible, and for everybody that joined us and contributed into the comments. We'll be taking bits and pieces of this and putting it back out to the world again over the next couple of weeks for you to really dig into and ask more questions. But feel free to keep the conversation going in the comments as well. But thank you again to you three, Pinpoint and Charlie, and have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.